Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's show. This is our first ever virtual show in Europe, so thank you so much for dialing in wherever you are, whether that's from your home office or your bed, we won't judge. My name is Grace McDonald. I'm a content marketer at LinkedIn and the host of our episode today. In this new economic climate we're all facing, ensuring your teams are working as one unit is crucial. And I'm sure we're all experiencing how this can be complicated by work from home. The topic of our conversation today is sales and marketing alignment. LinkedIn recently commissioned a study with Forrester surveying sales and marketing professionals across Europe. The study discovered 4 pillars that can, with the right adjustments, can deliver progress. These are strategy, process, culture, and content. Our conversation today is going to hit on all 4 of these. Before we get started, I just want to highlight a couple of quick housekeeping notes. Firstly, we're live on LinkedIn. The recording of the show will be available straight away afterwards on the LinkedIn Marketing Solutions and the LinkedIn Sales Solutions page. You're able to get involved in the conversation and we invite your questions and comments. My team are working in the background to push those to me and to our panel. So please get involved. You can add questions throughout in the comments underneath the stream. You can also follow along the conversation on LinkedIn with the hashtag Moments of Trust. So please get involved. Now, let me introduce our talented panel of guests. Today, we're joined by an expert panel who are ideally suited to talk to us about sales and marketing alignment. Virtually with us today are Alison, IBM CMO, Hans, IBM's EMEA Chief Digital Officer and Leader of Digital Sales, and international speaker and author, Jeff Davies of Create Togetherness. I think the perspectives and experiences you all bring to the table will make for an excellent conversation today. So at LinkedIn, we often kick off conversations with a little icebreaker. Alison, can you tell me and the viewers a little bit about IBM, your role, and one thing that's not on your LinkedIn profile?
Hi, thank you, Grace. So I'm Alison. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer for IBM here in Europe, Middle East, and Africa, and that means that I represent more than 100 countries. My role includes marketing strategy, brand and reputation, demand generation, and obviously sales pipeline development. I've worked at IBM almost all my career, and people always ask me why. So I stay at IBM for 2 reasons, I would say. The first is it's ever changing, but always stays true to its core values, not least driving innovation that matters. And that's not only for clients in our company, but also for society. And second, then that's because ultimately we make technology that makes the world work better. And so today, IBM puts the power of hybrid cloud and quantum and our experience in AI to work on problems big and small. Be that what we did in response to the pandemic for our employees, for our clients, but also to help governments, to sustainability challenges, to healthcare. We recently announced a partnership with the Michael J. Fox Foundation for Parkinson's, to our ability to engage hundreds of thousands of developers in our call for code, to invite the community to work with us to address everything from natural disasters to how we respond to inclusion challenges today. And so I get to work in an organization that's continually reinventing itself and how it does business. And so from a marketing perspective, that means we focused on a client-centric, data-driven, agile transformation, which has been exciting to be part of, and where my partnership with Hans comes in as well. And then one thing not on my LinkedIn profile, I love mountains. I've been to the Himalayas, to the Andes, to the Rockies, and even climbed Kilimanjaro.
Amazing. I will pass that to Hans. Thank you so much, Alison.
All right, thanks, Alison. Grace, thanks for inviting me. So I'm the Chief Digital Officer for IBM EMEA, and I've got the privilege to lead digital sales across EMEA as well. Part of the European leadership team, which for EMEA spans around 86,000 people. So we're fairly sized group of people, and as a technology company here across EMEA. A little bit about myself. I'm a technologist. I love to work with people, different cultures, different backgrounds, very international, brought up and lived in many different countries. What's not on my LinkedIn profile, I love to work with people that are deeply passionate and have a high level of quality for what they do. In IBM, you'll find many of them. I love to work on complex problems and make them a lot simpler. I'm a fond diver. I like to go diving. It's nice and quiet down there. And with that, I'm also a father, so I like to spend time with my family.
Thank you, Hans. It's a good time to be able to go diving, escape for a little while.
Exactly. No virus underneath, right?
Yeah, not yet anyway.
Not yet.
Jeff, good morning. You're obviously in Chicago, so thank you so much for joining us. We'll pass to you to introduce yourself.
Yeah, so my name is Jeff Davis. I'm an international keynote speaker and author of the new book, Great Togetherness. I really focus on helping companies optimize revenue growth through strategically aligning sales and marketing. Started my career actually in sales and transitioned to marketing, and really saw that we just, as two functions in the organization, didn't understand each other. And so I've got an opportunity to see that, all the way from Fortune 100 companies all the way down to early stage startups. So it's an issue that's pervasive across industries, across different sizes of business. So I've really dedicated my passion, my time, and my energy on helping revenue leaders across the world really look at this differently and really start to build a revenue engine, right, that works across silos so that sales and marketing can be one team. And so couldn't be happier to be on this call, specifically because of the research that you've worked with at Forrester, and also obviously the topic. And the thing I would say that's not on my LinkedIn profile is that I actually started music very early in my, very early, I should say. So I play violin and piano amongst some other instruments. So I just probably didn't think that was appropriate to put on my LinkedIn profile. But anyway.
Very talented. I think that I have on my profile that I'm a dog lover. It's just everything is there. So, well, I am super excited to have you all here today. Not only do we have sales and marketing colleagues from IBM, we also have Jeff, who's going to give us that bird's eye view of what's happening across different industries and different companies as well. So let's kick off. So as I mentioned, and Jeff also plugged there, the Forrester research we did with LinkedIn and Forrester discovered some really interesting stuff. So the pillars as well. But in that, 89% of sales and marketers who were surveyed said that sales and marketing alignment is critical for their next 12 months and the growth that they expect and want for the next 12 months. But I think, Jeff, we'll start at the basics. What is sales and marketing? Is it an industry buzz term? What are you seeing?
Yeah, so it's definitely not an industry buzz term. This is something that all revenue leaders, so head of sales, head of marketing, as well as the CEO, should take seriously. And so really what it's about working across the silos between sales and marketing and building a revenue engine that's capable of meeting the needs of the modern buyer. The modern buyer-seller relationship has completely shifted, has completely changed due to digital disruption, which Alison kind of alluded to earlier when we were speaking. And what that has done is empowered them with almost unlimited amount of information, resources, and connectivity. And so showing up and talking about features and benefits as we've done in the past really is not going to work anymore. They want a cohesive buying experience that is easy to navigate and really helps them make a decision about what's best for them. And that can really only be created when sales and marketing work together and create that buying experience that gets people from being a prospect to actually being a customer.
Yeah, I guess, Grace, to me, I echo what Jeff said, right? I mean, it's a seamless, integrated customer experience. You can measure that with NPS, and obviously something that you continuously improve. It's not something that you fix once. From a marketing perspective, when you start to think about what integration really means, it's a gift to have the direct feedback from your clients on a day-to-day basis, either directly or through the voice. What's top of mind, what's resonating, and especially at the moment when the market conditions are changing so rapidly, as Jeff said, for example, it was really helpful to have the feedback to pivot from when we talk about business survival in the current environment through to actually shifting to talk about sustainable recovery. When has the conversation shifted in our clients, and what comes next? So we can always make sure that we are focusing on the topics that are top of mind for the organizations that we serve.
So Jeff, I think you're spot on. Yeah, you're almost talking about what we do every day in IBM currently, because we, but many other people have realized that deep digitization is at the forefront of what happens outside in society, economically, socially. Deep digitization is there, and it requires many of our companies, many of our partners, and also individuals to really look at technical consumption in a very different way. So when you look at sales and marketing, it's not sales and marketing, it's the integration of the two seamlessly to create one client experience. And that's something that is so evident. It's a complete no-brainer when you look at a digital practice, digitization. So you're spot on there.
And Hans, when you're talking about integration between those teams, and I know that you and Alison's teams have been working closely together for quite a while now to really improve this, what do you think has been the key ingredient to the success that you've experienced to date?
It's that realization, not only between Alison and me, but it's a realization deep down in the organization and back, that client experience, the way clients value that experience is really the new norm. If it was a bad experience, they won't come back. If it's a good experience, they will keep coming back. So the last experience, the last best experience or bad experience defines the next one. And that realization of a common goal in everything we do, from the smallest piece to the largest piece, is really what we're talking about here. And this is not only to IBM, it's across all industries, as I just mentioned. So that's what we mean.
Yeah, and I think the other thing, Hans, that I would say is a key ingredient is the open two-way dialogue, not just between you and me, but actually with our teams. We've built squads that work together, focus on individual challenges together in service of a common goal, which is the customer experience. And so we're always coming at it with a mindset of what can we improve? How do we break every client journey down into micro steps? And how do we work together to improve those, work out the priority, work out the impact? And so that communication and open dialogue that the teams have, I think, is another key ingredient I'd probably list.
And I would also echo what you both said and also raise to leaders to help them understand that experience is now valued more than price and product. And so you have people that, will buy an inferior product because the customer experience is better. If you are difficult to work with, if it's difficult to buy from you, by virtue that there's so many other options, buyers today are just raising their hands saying, if you can't figure this out, I'm gonna go to somebody else. So it is imperative to focus on the customer experience, that journey, because people will opt out even if you have a superior product or your pricing is better. It's become more important than ever before.
And I think it's that internal versus external, right? And my next question is really about that, and it's for you, Alison. So your teams have been working very closely together, but do you share a leadership team at the moment? As do you think this is important?
In digital sales, yes, we're part of the same organization and leadership team. In other parts of IBM, mostly no, but that's changed over time, back and forth. And I would say generally for digital, which is the work where Hans and I overlap, where the world is changing so fast, as we've been discussing, it's really helped bring the teams closer together and fostered more experimentation and collaboration, and sort of working together as a single team and projects, as I was just describing, to better address market segments or routes or, build new relationships and ideas has really helped. Ultimately, though, personally, I think reporting lines should be somewhat irrelevant, and it's not about the silo that you work for or the bit of the business that you work for, but it's about making sure that you have strong enough relationships that really we can all focus on a common goal, which is the customer experience that Jeff was just talking about.
And Jeff, is this something you're seeing? Sorry, Hans, I'm actually jumping over you there.
Maybe to add, yeah, because in a multidimensional world that we live in, it's the customer experience in the end is the end measurement, is the key KPI that we all try to improve. What is underneath in this digitization world is also a lot of other topics. So how do you make the right strategic choices? How do you make sure in the digital world, for example, that your data remains your data, that it's secure, that it's scalable, that it's open, non-proprietary, that you're able to have the flexibility, the current state to future state, to move your data and your application stacks and everything you do to an on-premise or off-premise environment. And I think that flexibility the choice you make on who do you engage with is extremely crucial. In the end, client experience, yes. Underneath, from an enterprise perspective, incredibly important to make the right decisions. And therefore, me, Alison, but also us as a technology company with everything we've got, we need to harmonize and work together. And that's really what I see happening. And it's accelerating with what's happening externally, which is really cool to see, Grace.
Amazing. Jeff, is this something that you see when you're working with clients and consulting? Like, is there shared leadership teams? Is it completely siloed, or does it depend on the organization size?
Yeah, so I focus more on working with mid-market and SMB organizations, much smaller, obviously, than IBM. So what I'm saying, it's kind of a mixed bag. I will say on this side of the fence, so to say, you stereotypically don't see what we would call like a chief revenue officer. That's a newer concept that many small organizations are grappling with. Depending on the industry, again, a lot of times what you'll see is marketing a lot of times serves sales, and that a lot of small organizations are very sales-centric or very sales-focused. And so you may have marketing rolling up to the sales leader or a VP, right? And it's all about, how the organization, how leadership looks at marketing, whether it's a strategic partner or it's more of a tactical partner, AKA, website updates, creating content, etc. So that is a newer idea that is not really permeated smaller organizations. Again, it depends on the industry, it depends on the size of organizations. But I think most of them still kind of have marketing either reporting up to some type of sales-related leader and or a VP of the division or whatnot.
Yeah, Chief Revenue Officer and Chief Growth Officer is another one I've heard.
Yeah.
We've discussed it on previous shows as well. We actually did a little bit of a look on the platform, and there's not a huge amount of them yet for terms that are used a lot and saying these are kind of going to be our saving grace, no pun intended. There's not a huge amount of them yet, so it'll be interesting to see that kind of track up, I guess, or trend up over the next while.
Yeah, I think you tend to see them on both ends of the spectrum. You'll see them in larger organizations, but you'll also see them in like the startup world, right? Where it's a little bit easier because they're more agile. But that mid-section of SMBs and mid-market, that term, very much like your research or your search query found, that's not really a term that's being used frequently.
Mm-hmm. Jeff, in your book, Create Togetherness, which has just been released as an audiobook, we were discussing earlier. So congratulations.
Thank you very much.
You stated that technology cannot cure misalignment. And we had a little bit of a debate about this before. So I'd love you to talk to our audience about what you meant with that statement.
Yeah, so I really, really wanted to draw a line in the sand and be very intentional with saying that, right? We have so often kind of overlooked this rift between sales and marketing and just tried to throw technology at it, AKA the CRM. If you put it in the CRM, we're aligned. And that's just not the truth. Technology can only accelerate what you have. And so if you have a bad process, if you have bad culture, if you have bad strategy, technology is only going to accelerate that and it's still going to be bad. So what we have to do is step back for 2 seconds and think about the underlying issues that are going on around the fact that at the end of the day, this misalignment thing that we talk about is really a people issue. Earlier in my work, we kind of talked about sales and marketing being at war with each other and hating each other. The stereotypical story of, sales complaining about marketing kind of complaining about sales. But what I know more than anything through doing this work and speaking and working with clients, sales and marketing just don't know each other. And so there's a lack of empathy. And so before we can get to the fun, shiny objects and the technology, and there's a ton of great technology out there, we have to deal with the underlying issues of getting sales and marketing to have a relationship first and foremost, and then really start thinking about what is the strategy and what are the things we need to change within our organization, then put technology on top of that to enable us to be able to pull those things through, and then obviously accelerate and scale where we want to. And so that's what I mean about not trying to start with the technology, but fixing the underlying issues first, and then putting technology on top of that to help accelerate and enable you to achieve doing that at scale.
I think, Grace, you're on mute. We cannot hear
Sorry.
you. There we go.
The joys of the virtual world.
Grace, it's live.
Oh, what I was saying was genius as well. So what I was saying was that the next question that we have is really, it's something we've touched on already around the customer and how the customer will leave the experience if they're not really getting the value that sales and marketing alignment can bring them. Hans, is there anything else that you think sales and marketing really does for the customer throughout the journey?
I mean, absolutely, yes. The trick is, how do you frame it? And for us, especially in digital sales and together with marketing and a lot of other functions within IBM, we've adapted a mantra that basically says attract, transact, and interact. You attract clients, you transact with them, and once you transact with them, you interact with them. Make them consume more in a different way, help them transition, do more with technology, etc. So really a three-step process. To linking back to what Jeff said, if you digitize a mediocre process, you get a mediocre digitized process. So it's incredibly important to, in this new world, redefine how these sales motions, how this client interaction needs to happen in the digital world. It doesn't mean that the way you used to do sales is the way you will do sales in the future, given this need for digitization. The other point that I like to loop back what Jeff said, the word of empathy and understanding for us is everything. Yeah, because there's this famous quote which I love, which basically says we don't see things as they are, we see them as we are. A little bit philosophical maybe, but when you look at marketing, when you look at sales, when you look at the traditional way of doing things, this quote to me summarizes the challenge we are facing. And I think Alison, myself, the teams in the ground are doing phenomenal work to attract, transact, and interact in a very different way. So you look at yourself, Grace, and Jeff, and also Alison, who wants to speak to a seller, right? That era is almost gone. It's more on how do you interact with a company, consume their services in a very, very different way, and therefore build a relationship. So sales will transition into client success. Client success teams is the future of how we will interact with society. So a big change coming.
That's where I think the technology does help, right? In that I completely agree. You have to have the process right in the first place. But if what we're trying to do is continually improve the customer experience and smooth engagement, just what you said, Hans, it can be driven a lot by perception and what people think and people's opinions. Actually, what speaks best is real data. What are customers doing? So how do we automate and infuse data into every step of the process so that with data we can measure whether engagement is improving or declining, which pieces are working or not working, so we can continue to drive improvement and take stock of what really matters. It's one of the quickest ways of spotting changing trends or changing preferences is actually you see patterns in the data that you look at every time. And that's the thing that is so useful, I think, for our teams to work together. How do we adjust where we're spending money, or how do we adjust on the specific offer that we have in market at a particular time? So absolutely, you have to have the relationship there in the first place. But then I think data and technology can make the partnership so much stronger to deliver really great outcomes.
And I'd also add too that, companies that are getting this right, and I think that Hans and Alison will probably agree with me, are looking at technology as a way to enable intimacy. I think we have gotten so excited about all of these tools that we are focused more on the technology than really what it is about now as we shifted these and customers and buyers get more comfortable with all this technology. It's creating a sense of intimacy and personalization. While we're behind the scenes scrambling and getting all the information and sharing and using technology to get that, we don't want the buyer to see all of that. That's behind the scenes. But what it should enable you to do is to come off as if you're having a one-on-one interaction and one-on-one conversation seamlessly between sales and marketing. There shouldn't be any, clunkiness between the handoff. That is really where we're evolving to, and companies that are getting it right and really are winning in the market understand that the simplicity of that intimate relationship is what the technology should be able to do. So I think that's a mind shift of not just stacking more stuff on the tech stack to look cool and have the latest and greatest, but really to be able to, again, go back into a simple, intimate experience where buyers feel like they're heard and getting what they want and desire.
I think less is more in that environment as well, Jeff. I mean, I think the other thing is you can get that, like you say, there can be a very complicated tech stack that optimizes every single piece of the journey with this perfect tool and this perfect tool and the next perfect tool. But if they don't talk to each other in an integrated end-to-end way, you're actually making the problem worse rather than better. So you might optimize one particular piece of the experience. But as Hans said, we're thinking about this as an end-to-end integrated long-term relationship, attract, transact, interact. So that has to work seamlessly end-to-end in a frictionless way, as you were saying.
And this is why also, too, it's important for sales and marketing leaders to build a relationship, because we historically have bought technology in silos, right?
Independently, absolutely.
And so as you start to try to build this relationship and this, this oneness across both sales and marketing, create the revenue engine, you're going to have redundancies and you're going to have technology that doesn't talk to each other. So you've got to first do an audit of everything that you're using. To your point, Alison, just see what we have. Do we have overlapping systems? And then for there, start having better conversations about when you're buying new technology. If it's going to affect your colleague on the other side of the fence, let's have a joint conversation to make sure that, you're buying the best solution for the revenue engine and not just sales or marketing, because ultimately, as you stack more of these things on top of each other, it makes the process more cumbersome. And, for sellers, especially sales reps, SDRs, whatnot, adding more tools is not always better. It actually is starting to make their world worse, because they cannot do what they're really meant to do, which is make a connection between them and the buyer. So we got to stop buying technology in silos. It's not helping us create a cohesive experience.
Yeah, I think as well that because marketers and salespeople are so much more considerate about what they do and how they do it in partnership now and what goes out to prospects and customers, bad experiences are very, very obvious. And when you guys are talking, I'm thinking of one that I'm currently receiving from an SMB that I won't mention, of course, but my name is wrong. So I'm Garrett to them. They have my company and everything right. But they're sending from a sales rep, marketing sending from a sales rep, and they're just sending and sending and sending. And I'm refusing to unsubscribe because I want to see how far they're going to go before they stop. So you definitely notice the bad eggs now. It makes you kind of learn further experiences.
Very true.
And I think, Grace, and maybe to conclude, if you look at because the question was really about how do we use data in a different way to steer this new conversation, to pivot to this new chapter. And what I think is extremely powerful, at least the way, I mean, I'm biased, of course, but the way we do it now within IBM is really looking at the cost of acquisition versus lifetime value. So what's the cost of acquiring a client and what's its lifetime value? And how do we improve significantly? And this is an economical benchmark that is not only used by IBM, but also by other parties. Cost of acquisition versus lifetime value are two very, very critical KPIs. And all data that fuels those two will capture the new type of sales in the future. So it's a great high-level KPI that can be used for the future.
That's led me very nicely into my next question as well, Hans. So thank you very much. And it's around that exact topic. It's that B2B tech sales cycles are long. We know they are extremely long and they're getting longer. So research we did at LinkedIn last year stated that on average, it's north of 6 months and there's 8 to 13 people involved, so decision makers. Do you think proving those metrics, and Alison, for you proving ROI, is that difficult the longer the sales cycle?
Yes. I think, as you say, the longer the process, the more cycles, the more repeating alignment is required. And you have to make sure that your interactions stay in lockstep for every point in the cycle. And we all know that client journeys aren't linear. So it doesn't necessarily mean that X number of weeks or months have passed, they're going to be at this stage. It's always different and the situation's always changing. So you need that data integration I was talking about earlier to know, to be able to see, to be able to judge what the next best action might be. And as your research found, longer sales cycles also tend to be indicative of more complex buying groups. So you've got more stakeholders that you have to connect with and interact with over time, and be able to spot patterns in that stakeholder group. So we're not tracking only necessarily the key decision maker, but actually what's happening around, and how can we continue to make sure we're providing the right experiences at the right moment, to help customers on their journey with us. And that's why the automation and data that I was talking about earlier, I think can really help us. But yes, the longer it is, the more complicated it is, I would say.
And also, so spot on, Alison. The longer, the more complicated. I also see a lot, big companies, smaller companies, medium-sized companies, is that the shorter time to value, even if processes are long, even if the sales cycles are long, the shortest amount of time to value for the client. When we talk about technology, how can you provide them an AI engine the fastest way possible, and then start the rest of the process after, instead of going through the full process and then delivering the AI engine, as an example, is a very different way of interacting with a client. It really goes into fastest time to value and then co-creation from that point forward, which is a really different dynamic than maybe 5 to 10 years ago, and I think it's one that won't go away. It's almost the expectation now from many of our small, medium, and even our largest clients.
Great. Jeff, are you seeing that in the mid-market and SMB world, are sales and marketing teams more aligned on their metrics in the way that Alison and Hans have talked about?
Yeah, I wish. So that is not the case. I love what Hans said, because really what I am trying to get people to understand is that they have to level up to the metrics of the revenue engine. So those things, KPIs, exactly like you said, lifetime value, cost of customer acquisition, because those are not things that you necessarily look at solely in your silo, and they are an interdependent KPI that you actually need input from both sides of the organization. So a lot of times when marketing leaders talk about ROI, we're talking about ROI really to give you a lead, right? We're not talking about overall ROI, because what I want to see is the efforts that you've done and put into place, not just producing an MQL, but actually leading to either a closed business and or pipeline revenue. And so it's about broadening scope. And for a lot of people, that is difficult, because we're really turning kind of their metrics on their head and saying, we want to look at the global metrics. So that's an indicator of how efficient and effective our revenue engine is, and will really be indicative of telling you how broken the process and relationship is between sales and marketing. So we definitely are challenged with getting people to level up those metrics that really show this thing I call the revenue engine, how well it's performing in getting customers in and turning them into business.
Alison, is there one key metric you bring to stakeholders outside of Hans? Because you guys seem to be extremely aligned. So is there one marketing metric that you're like, okay, this is the one? Because I think internally as well, we have a lot of arguments around showing engagement versus the ROI versus there's many different ways we can present our projects, especially in the content world where I am, and it's very top of funnel. Yeah, so I'll pass that one to you.
But I mean, ultimately, we have to share pipeline and revenue goals, as Jeff was saying, right? You have to align around that engine. And then I think beyond that, it really depends on the challenge or the particular problem that we're seeing. So, to optimize actions and our investment, especially where we have longer sales cycles, there are many other metrics that we look at as a team, like engagement or responses or visits or conversion rates or whatever. But we're all part of the same integrated engine. So if responses are down, we need to understand why. If trials don't convert, what can we learn? If we need to work together to remove the friction in the end-to-end process, what does NPS tell us? So there's lots of different things that we might look at. And we have, in our team, we work with a small number of OKRs, objectives and key results, that we think are the leading indicators for business success at the moment. And that might be focusing on a particular customer segment, or indeed a particular route for us at a moment in time. But they don't stay fixed. We add them and change them over time. And so, for example, right now, one of the things we're looking at is the performance of events. and the switch from face-to-face events to digital events, because that's been so critical in how we as a marketing function can contribute to the business here and support the digital engine that we have. And so those change over time, I would say, but ultimately it comes down to pipeline and revenue goals.
And Grace, I would add to that, a lot of times what I do when I'm working with clients is help them understand the importance of having a shared dashboard. And you really can think of it as in 3 different quadrants. So you have one at the very top that spans both sales and marketing. And so those are those metrics that Hans talked about that we're looking at, cost of customer acquisition, lifetime value, obviously percent attainment of revenue, because those are things that affect everybody, affect both sales and marketing. And then you funnel down into the other 2 quadrants, where though you go into a deeper dive, and Alison, you hit the nail on the head of those marketing metrics that are specific to marketing. There are indicators of if we're laddering up to achieve our top line OKRs around revenue and whatnot. I think what we have to get out of, especially on the marketing side, because I'm continuing to see this, is what I call vanity metrics that make us feel good, and they release dopamine, like lift, likes, all those things, and those are nice because they're indicators that we're moving in the right direction. But those don't always lead to revenue, right? So we have to be careful of not just stroking our egos. But that's kind of how I explain it, is that, if there's 3 quadrant shared dashboard across the top, sales and marketing, and then the individual sales metrics and marketing metrics that are truly kind of in the weeds for that particular function. And I think that's stereotypically how I suggest moving, so that you can kind of see what's happening overall in the revenue engine.
So Jeff, may I add, in IBM, it's one of our core values, but I believe in this new world, it's incredibly important, and that's in the end. And I don't have the ultimate measurement for this. It's clients' trust. Yeah. So retention and growth, in the end, will have to translate into clients' trust. Yeah. The client experience, client reward, industry knowledge, thought leadership, all of those things that are critical in the end should result in clients' trust. And in every relationship, not only to client, but also to employee, to every engagement, trust. And we can go into a bit of a rat hole as well on data and who do you trust your data with. It's trust in this new world is everything. And I think you need to work with parties you trust. You need to work with employees you trust. Retention and growth will translate into client trust.
I want to go back a second to something you mentioned there, Alison, because I think we can't do a call like this in the current world without talking about events and the move to virtual, which was so quick and so impressive by everyone. So how reliant was the team on events, and how do you make sure that nothing is dropped now in this virtual world?
Yeah, it's been quite a ride, I would say, this year. And we had a very busy March and April. Very busy March and April as a marketing function. So the thing that's really critical for us now is we now have to look for innovative ways to create value digitally. And what we used to do in person as an organization, we were run and attend a lot of face-to-face events. And one example would be we have our premier annual event called Think. That was originally scheduled to be held in San Francisco in May. And thousands of people had pre-registered to attend, and practically overnight, our marketing event team had to re-engineer what was a 3-day program to fit within a digital platform. And so we had to work collaboratively across the entire enterprise with our business partners. We had to make Think accessible, and actually, we made Think accessible to many more, 5 times more people worldwide. And the registration for the event far eclipsed anything we could have managed at the event had it been held in San Francisco as planned. And a number of things helped us do that. Agile practices helped us pivot to do that in just 8 weeks. And we took that decision at the end of March for the event that happened in May. But also happening quite early in the lockdown, we learned many valuable lessons in what worked, how our audience dynamics changed. We had many more prospects, many more attendees per client, and also how sales interactions were very different. So there are a lot of things that don't easily translate, as you guys know, and we continue to experiment and innovate and optimize our client experiences, both on our own Watson Media platform but also in the way we construct smaller experiences, including using platforms like this one. And so learning how we use data to define tighter audiences, build tighter content experiences, allow for tighter seller integration. How do you drive sales interaction in every digital event that we run? Time is precious for all of us now, and it's incumbent on us to be as useful as possible. And so it's changing a lot and continues to do so.
Great. I think it's been an uphill battle, but it's been so impressive and so creative what sales and marketing teams across the world have pulled together in such a short time, but also such a stressful time in personal life. And we made the most out of a lockdown, I suppose, across the world.
We assumed that things that worked in a face-to-face event, just the simple things like an automatic follow-up would naturally translate into a digital world. And somehow, because you haven't been together face-to-face, it's harder to make that initial call sometimes, right? To say, oh, hi, it was great. You haven't had that same shared experience. So we have to think differently about follow-up, for example, or how do we create space in our events to have that interaction so that naturally follows on. So all kinds of things like that we're thinking about differently.
Great. We could talk on this topic for hours, I think, guys, but unfortunately I only have you for one. So I'm going to do one more of my own questions and I'm going to switch it out to the audience. So just a reminder to the audience, you can add your questions for any of the panelists on the live stream or with the hashtag Moments of Trust. So Jeff, I'm going to give the last question from me to you. And it is very much around, you are an expert in this topic. You speak on it. You wrote your book and the Audible book. Where can organizations start? What would be your first thing you recommend people do tomorrow?
Yeah, so I tell people this all the time. There is a lot to do, and it truly is a business transformation. And I don't sugarcoat it that it's, alignment between sales and marketing doesn't happen in a week or 2 weeks or even a month. But what you can do tomorrow, if you're a sales leader or a marketing leader or even a CEO, is have a conversation, a cross-functional conversation, just to get to know each other in a deeper way, in a professional way, in a business way, so that you can start to leverage each other. I think, I was at a keynote a while ago and I had a gentleman run up to me afterwards and I was like, this is either going to go really good or really bad. I don't know what's going to happen. But he shared with me, he said, you really helped me think about how I interact with my marketing colleague in a different way. He said, we have a great relationship. We talk all the time and that sort of thing. But what he said was, I've only been in sales. Like I'm a sales leader now because I grew up in sales. I'm a sales guy. So I don't know what to ask from my marketing colleague. I don't know what to expect, right? And so I think what we have to change the narrative is it's great to have a personal relationship where you get along and you like each other, but we need to start leveraging our business relationships so that we can start to help each other be more effective and efficient in our functional areas. So literally tomorrow you can get in the conference room and say, how can I help you? How can you help me? And we actually talk about it. I talk about it in the book, Great Togetherness, where I go through and list the things that marketing leaders can share with sales leaders and how they can help them, and then vice versa. So that's where I would say, start with a conversation.
Amazing. Thank you. Is that how it worked for you, Alison and Hans, who made the first move?
I think it's spot on. I would add one more thing to it, Jeff, and I'm sure that Alison will have more details on it. But if you between sales and marketing and also other functions pivot around the client experience, and within the client experience, the journey you want the client to experience, just go through it. Take a whiteboard, take the websites and go through the actual experience, not just the marketing material, not just the brand or product material. Go through the full cycle, the full buying cycle. What you'll find will be remarkable. And then once you understand what a client goes through, then you could say, okay, this worked maybe in the traditional world. How will this work now in the digital world? And I think when you do that as one team, forget that you're sales or forget that you're marketing, call yourself an IBMer or go through the lens of your client. You come to a remarkable collaboration between various silos in the past. Yeah. So I don't know, Alison, if that makes sense, but
no, it absolutely does. I mean, we've worked together and also with other teams in IBM to really go through that end-to-end experience, looking at every handoff that we have in our process and making sure we understand how it works. And you very quickly identify where there is a mismatch in expectations. So, what we believe as a marketing qualified lead may well not be qualified to the standard that the next step expects, for example. And even further down the funnel, as we qualify our marketing leads with some of our digital reps that work in Hans's organization, and we're passing on to our more senior reps or opportunity owners further down the line, we need to make sure that at every step, the level of understanding is right, the expectations are right. There's almost a document of understanding as to who owns what at every step, because even if you think it's clear and even if it's worked that way for a number of years, it can change over time, and actually must change over time and evolve, as the team have been saying. So, my advice would be pick a project, think about it, how you work together end to end, and think ultimately how you can both work together at every step, because everybody has ideas of what you can do better tomorrow, because even if it's working brilliantly, you can always work better. But pick a project and work out how you can improve customer experience and customer value.
And one thing to add to that, because I think for many organizations, there needs to be a fundamental mind shift in thinking about who owns what part of the funnel, right? Marketing is going deeper into traditionally where sales territory was, and sales is coming further up funnel. So I would share with folks is to step back for 2 seconds, and very much like Hans and Alison alluded to, trading interactions, because you can't just say only marketing owns this, only sales own this, or here's the point of handoff, because there may be opportunities where people come into the buying journey and they're really educated, they've come to a decision, and they really want to talk to sales. And if we're having to gate them and go through this process because we feel that's the ideal way to do it, we may lose them. We may just need to jump to step 7. So think of it more as, what is the ideal or optimal interaction that we have? And there may be multiple ways to do that. There's multiple ways that you could have marketing and sales interact to get this customer from point A to point B. And I think when you think of it in that way, because at the end of the day, we're at a point now where most buyers don't care where it comes from. If it's sales, marketing, they just don't care. They want the information they need. They want to be able to make a decision. And so whoever is best at facilitating that should indeed do that.
100% agree.
Agree.
Great, guys. I'm going to switch over to the live Q&A. So again, a huge thank you to everyone who's submitted a question. We're going to try to get to as many as we can, but there is a lot. So I apologize if we do not get your question to the panel. So I'm going to give the question to the person I think it's best suited to, but I would ask everyone else, if you'd like to jump in, feel free. So Hans, I think this one is really towards you and the sales teams. So how do you replace networking time lost from the lack of events when you've digitalized your process? So I guess this is really in the last few months.
I think by having a discussion with the clients to provide in the end an online digital experience. So instead of talking about certain products or certain philosophies in technology, actually getting clients to get interested where we can demonstrate, and more than demonstrate, have them experience what a specific piece of the technology could do for them, how it will create business value, how it will generate maybe revenue for them as end clients. And I mean, the creativity that I've seen in the last 3 months is remarkable, all the way from digital lunches to complete online detailed webinars around experience, demoing what we have, co-creation online. We had digital garages. There's a multitude of things we've done and continue to do for our clients. So it's much more shifting away from one-way presentation. It's accelerated into this notion of co-creation and actually demoing and co-creating, building what they would need in the end. Yeah. Great.
Thank you. The next one then, I'm going to pass to Jeff first, but I think everyone might have something to add here. So it's the question is, what type of technology and tools are out there that you think makes alignment easier?
Yeah, so there's so much. I think, and there's a strong debate about CRM. I still am a proponent of utilizing CRM, but I think in the way that the CRM is utilized today is not just a repository of data and things from sales. You really have to leverage it as being a hub of insights that you can tap into to really understand how customers, how buyers are interacting with the organization and with you, and learning from that, and then having that really be your impetus for changing strategy or changing your tactics. I also think if it's applicable and it's become easier for a lot smaller organizations, ABM orchestration, so account-based marketing orchestration. I think there's a ton of great tools that will allow you to help that once you start to scale those programs. So there's so much technology out there, right? But again, I would then go back to understanding what you're trying to achieve first. And then I guarantee you there are a plethora of options as far as a technology standpoint that you can leverage in order to achieve your end goals. But those are the two that come to mind, especially CRM, using it in a different way. And then obviously those ABM orchestration tools.
Yeah, for us, it's also, if you look at Trello, if you look at a lot of the agile tooling that we have to connect processes in a different ways across silos, to work on those on a weekly, daily basis with stand-ups, beginning of the week, end of the week, really that facilitate a different type of working aligned to this end-to-end holistic discussion we had a little bit earlier. I think is helping all of us going to that end state. And the more and more people, not because we're asking them to use the tools, but more and more people embracing the tools and using it with that intent, the faster I see it shift. And it's remarkable to see from a distance what these tools are actually facilitating. So really good momentum there.
Amazing. So the next question I really like, and at LinkedIn we have a culture of always be learning. So this one's specifically around that. And I'm going to broaden it out a little bit. The question is, where do you guys go to learn more about sales and marketing alignment? How can the audience learn more? But I think that we could actually broaden that to, where do you go to learn about new things in sales and in marketing?
I go to Jeff's book.
There we go. In case you're looking for it, togethernessbook.com. Thank you, Alison, for the shout out.
So Grace, I'll tell you a personal story. Yeah, when I lived in China for a bit, and at some point the air cons weren't working, and we had repairments. In the end, when you get angry or frustrated or you get disappointed by the service you're getting, you go deep. So you do studies on how air cons work and how you configure them and install them. And at some point, after 3 days, you going deep on a subject, you're able to install and configure these air cons yourself. So you do all the wiring, you do all the things. Morale of the story is people shouldn't talk about problems too much. We should go to people that actually understand them, learn from them, and where there is no learning, go deep and learn yourself. I think there is so much of learning that now is available. You don't need to go to a university. Use YouTube, order stuff, and go and do it. 9 out of 10 times is the best way to start the learning, but it requires curiosity, determination, grit, and I think those ingredients are absolutely key. Yeah.
I think the other thing I would say is the world is changing so fast that there's lots of things happening where no one has the answer yet. And so there's a lot you can learn simply by trying and experimenting. And so, you heard Hans and I talking about different steps of the process, things we can work on. We're not necessarily learning. Absolutely, we're picking up what we can from the market, from other companies that we speak to, from our clients, from our peers, from sessions like this. I've learned a lot just in this conversation, but also what can we learn for ourselves, right? What happens if we just try something, observe, have a testing plan, know what I'm looking to see, what I'm looking to find, and work out where to go. So I'd also encourage everyone to just start, just try something and see what you can learn.
I would also add to that too, all joking aside, besides the book, but one of the things that I always try to do with my platform, with our work, is really create these integrated thought leadership pieces where sales leaders and sales and marketing leaders and sellers and marketers can learn from the same piece of content or the same experience. And so, what I am really excited about. I know we've moved to this virtual world, but a lot more conferences that than 5 years ago have not only the sales and marketing track, but they have integrated tracks. So I would encourage you to attend some of these conferences with your counterpart across the aisle, and go to the same sessions and do a debrief afterwards to see what you heard and what they heard, and how that applies to your particular function in the organization. And also, I encourage people all the time to read a book or two that is not necessarily geared towards you. So if you're a marketing leader, read a sales book. If you're a sales leader, read a marketing book, because you'll come at it from a different perspective. And many times, although you may not need to lead that particular strategy or whatnot, it will inform some of the things that you do, and able to empower your seller or your marketer to be able to do those things better.
That's great, guys. I will say to our audience as well that the LinkedIn Learning team, which is our learning platform, throughout COVID have opened up over 100, if not more, learning courses on various different topics. And I'm sure sales and marketing separately, but also probably together, is one of those. So if you just Google that, you'll be able to find some really cool courses completely free as well. I think we have time probably for one more question. And it's a big one, I guess, but we'll try it. So sales and marketing alignment works towards creating a single client experience. So we've all agreed on that. In this person's experience, marketers tend to pursue long-term objectives, while sales more short-term goals. Do you see that this culture is the origin of the problem of misalignment? And I will give that to Hans first. See what you think.
Yeah. It's kind of a difficult question through the lens of IBM, because we have so many different products and services in what we do. I think there's a lot of the origination of a lot of the problems we see maybe come from that, but not only. I think many corporations have a deep heritage in selling face to face, like selling cars face to face. You go to an agency where you walk in and you see all these beautiful cars and you buy the car, and maybe the same for clothes. But that over time has changed, and the way people are consuming products and services has changed dramatically. You can now buy a BMW online, you can buy a Tesla online, you can buy everything online, and you can experience a lot of what you need online, which requires us, back to our discussion, to rethink key metrics, how we operate end to end. How do you define success, client success, but also how do you create trust in this new environment? So the origination is there. I think the person that asked this question, for a large extent, is true, but it's changing very, very fast. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think there's lots of levers that marketing can pull to add value, as can sales, right? There's, how do we build a brand? How much does the brand that you have contribute to the ultimate outcome? What are the things that you do? How does your paid media contribute versus events? How good is your organic experience? How are you helping, in our case, drive enablement for the sales teams? How are we thinking about programs that drive lifetime value? What are the optimizations we can do to nurture, to progress, to improve yield? How are we doing account-based marketing? So you have to know how your mix works, whether those levers have short, medium, or long-term impact. And so if you work in one of those teams, maybe your horizons might be different to the sales teams, but actually I'd encourage marketing teams to think holistically about how they contribute, and also be really clear. This comes back to the integration and alignment. If we're focusing on the same objectives, actually both functions need to be focused on short-term goals. How do I deliver revenue today? But also, how do I build pipeline for the next 12 months? Both of those things have to happen. And historically, perhaps sometimes the long-term view has been the responsibility of one team and the short-term view the other. But I think, as we've been saying all the way through this call, actually the goalposts have moved. And Jeff was quite rightly saying earlier, actually the integration has shifted and we all have a role to play at every step. Yeah. So to me, it's just another way of saying, yes, perhaps that's where it's come from, but we need to integrate moving forward.
And I would agree with that as well. Time horizon, and I do a deep dive in this in the book, talking about kind of the underlying reasons that sales and marketing are misaligned. And time horizon view is definitely one of them. Historically, marketing has had a longer view. They're many times 2, 3, 4 quarters out, just because they need that that span of time to plan. And sales is usually, well, stereotypically more quarter focused on making sure that we're meeting quota. And so what a lot of marketing leaders have to realize is that, you know, and Alison, I love that you have to think about today and tomorrow, right? And so it's important for us to have that long range view as marketers, because we have a lot of things coming in the pipeline. But when you're communicating that to your sales colleagues, you have to communicate that way where it's in a bite-sized piece of what is in the immediate, what you're doing now, how is that going to impact me, and then give them a view of what's coming. Because if you're only talking about long range planning, for a lot of sellers or sales leaders, you're missing the mark because they're worried about closing out Q1 on plan, right? And so it's about the way in which we communicate with each other and making sure that we are focused on the same thing. And so I implore a lot of marketing leaders, especially, you kind of have to do that, you know, today and tomorrow sort of conversation. So you can say, here's where we're going, but, you know, for Q1 or Q2, this is where we think we're going to have immediate impact, either on pipeline and or closing business.
Jeff, thank you so much. We'll close it there. Alison, Hans, Jeff, it's been my absolute pleasure. You've been a pleasure to work with. I've really enjoyed the conversation. To our audience, I really hope you've had a great time on the call, our first virtual show since everything has kicked off. So it's been really exciting for us to bring this to you. We have another great show happening on September 10th from our team in the States. So that's I Heart IBM, still on this amazing topic. So a lot of goodness to find there. If you go to the LinkedIn Marketing Solutions page, you'll be able to register for the event there. A huge thank you. I'm sorry we did not get to all the questions, but there was just too much goodness to talk about. Continue the conversation with the hashtag Moments of Trust, and the recording will be available after the show on the LinkedIn Marketing Solutions page and the LinkedIn Sales Solution page. Again, a huge thank you to my guests and everyone behind the scenes who's made this happen. Have a great day.